of the Blue Couch, I'm joined by Dr. Jabulile Msimango-Galawe, more affectionately known as Dr. J. Dr. J, thank you so much for joining me on the Blue Couch. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Odile, and thank you for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. I just want to give the viewers some background. So Dr. J is a senior lecturer in the Wits Business School, a business coach, an entrepreneur, a mentor, a facilitator, a public speaker, a statistician, and a researcher. She has a PhD from the Wits Business School and an MSc and BSc in mathematical statistics in risk analysis from the University of the Free State. So Dr. J, you have so many hats, and I hope we can talk about most of them today. But perhaps you should start at the beginning of your, I don't want to say academic career, what do you call it when you start as a student, as your journey as a student with the BSc. So you have a BSc in mathematics, which I think after matric, most students sort of try to run in the opposite direction, of mathematics. What did you think you were going to be? And, what made you choose the BSc in mathematics?
Oh, actually, I did not choose it. So you know what happens when you at high school. So you normally, if you are deemed the intelligent learner, you are normally advised to take the science route in terms of your career. So that's how I got to choose that route. But initially, really, the dream was to be a medical doctor. But my matric results did not allow me to be. So then the advice when you get to university, if your results are not good enough, because when we studied, distinctions were very scarce. So when you get to the university level, you get advised that if you want to be a medical doctor and your marks are not good enough, then take the BSc for first year, then pass very well, and then go second year to do your medicine. But if obviously you come with marks that are not good, most likely you're going to struggle with your BSc, which was the case. I struggled with the BSc. First year, I failed half of the modules. So I couldn't move to the medicine second year. So I had to repeat the modules that I failed in BSc and then do those that I passed, then second year of BSc. And then at that stage, I started to do some calculations because now then the new advice was that finish your BSc. When you are done with your BSc, then you can move to second year medicine. And then I added up the years and I wanted to work, I wanted money, so that was too long for me. Yeah. So I decided to stay with the BSc. And during that process, so the BSc was biological science, basically. And then in that process, towards the end of the 4 years, you get to choose what you measure in. And then my choice of what I measure in was purely based on what I was passing well during my BSc. It had nothing to do with my passion, my dream job or anything. It was all about the modules that I was passing well. So the modules that I happened to be getting distinctions on were genetics and statistics. So then I majored in genetics and statistics. And then when I completed the BSc, there was a bursary to continue and do mathematical statistics at master's level. Obviously, there's money, free money, save my parents some money. So I went with that route. So I did my master's in mathematical statistics, which specifically was specializing in risk analysis. So that's how I ended up with the statistics. It was not pure maths, but it was mathematical statistics. So that's how I got to that part.
Yeah. So I just want to then talk about, because you say, what you did actually wasn't in line with your passion. And I assume you sort of wanted to help people as a medical doctor, right? But also in the world that we live in, we place so much emphasis on technical competency, but there are so many ways in which our personal interests and our technical competencies can actually complement one another. And you've actually done this very well. And I suppose you're still sort of living out your purpose, even if you're not doing it in a hospital. So you have a passion for people and their development, and you also have this sort of strong technical aptitude, and that's why you sort of have this broad range of hats that you have in your CV. So how do you sort of manage to reconcile these two? And I mean, did you know, obviously, yes, you did know that you had the people passion when you first started the BSc. But I mean, was it just that, or was there something specific about being a doctor that you now feel like you're missing out on, or is this it for you? You're getting everything you want out of this?
No, funny enough, I'm happy that I never got into medicine because I think I was going to be bored injecting people and prescribing medicine for people every day. So I could say it was God's intervention. It's sometimes when we fail, we cry because we want certain things and we don't get them. So I was very sad that I couldn't get into medicine. But connecting the dots backwards, I am happy that I didn't, because then that drove me to keep on trying different things so that I can find something that I'm passionate about, that I enjoy. It still turned out to be people development. But when I was choosing the medicine, it had nothing to do with my passion or people development. It had everything to do with the fact that I was deemed a clever student at high school, therefore chose the medicine. But after getting my master's in statistics, okay, when I was doing my BSc, then I started enjoying the statistics, which ended up being now my career path, which I'm enjoying doing that. I've got no regrets for that, and I've got no regrets that I never got the medicine. I enjoy the statistics. But in that journey of me being a statistician, trying to find a career that was fulfilling, then I moved out, because when my first job was working at Eskom, where I was a statistician, but because it was an engineering environment, I did not enjoy it because I couldn't really use my skills to the fullest. And then I got bored after 6 years, and then I went to start my own business. And that was when my journey of trying to find something fulfilling, something that I can enjoy, really started. I went and ran my business for about 6 years full-time. And then a recession happened in 2008, 2009, and my first business failed. And then during that part, I was enjoying running the business that I was running at the time, which was corporate clothing, learning material, and all that. But when it failed, it also drove me to a different path. And that's where the issue of failure come in, as to what do you do with your failure? Do you allow it to put you down, or do you take the lessons and build something out of it? So when my first business failed, I got into another journey of trying to find what now. And then as I was sitting at home, I've closed my business. Nobody wants to take me back in corporate as a statistician because I've been out for too long. Then I started browsing through newspapers looking for a job. And then I came across this job of being a lecturer at CPUT, which I applied for. I had no prior experience for it. I had no teaching qualification. I had nothing. But it was that moment where I was like, I want to try something different. I've been really bent in running a small business. I need something that will give me a break a bit, that is not too hectic, because at the time I thought lecturing was not going to be too hectic. Funny enough, I got that job with no prior experience or anything, but funny enough, they needed the stat skills, and then I was good enough during the interview. Then my journey started moving now towards academia. But as my journey was moving towards more the academic route, at the back of my mind, I still had the scars that I got from failing in my first business as an entrepreneur that stayed on, that was kind of like a debt that I felt I needed to pay at some stage. And in paying that debt, then it pushed me to do a PhD, because now what I realized in the academic space, without a PhD, you're really nothing.
Yeah.
So I pushed the PhD route, but I combined now the love of academia, teaching that I enjoyed, with the debt that I felt I needed to pay on the failure of my first business as an entrepreneur, to go and understand what is it, because when I looked at the stats, it said about 90% of the people who start their businesses fail in the first 3-5 years or so of operation. And the question I asked myself was, are we all of us, the 90% that's stupid, that we can't get this thing right?
Yeah.
Then I went on to do my PhD, hoping that I'll find the equation for success as a small business owner or as an entrepreneur. Did my PhD, I finished it. I'm still looking for that equation of success when you start and run. I've learned a few things, but I still don't have that perfect mathematical equation that says 1 + 1 is equals to 2. 1 + 1 in the entrepreneurship space remain unknown, and you only find out as you go along, because there's just too many factors to understand. So that's how my journey really, kind of like started having a parallel different paths that I started moving towards based on the prior experiences and the scars that I had that I wanted to settle, the sub-scores to settle.
Yeah. Sure. Interesting. So you've obviously been in these different spaces. So as an entrepreneur, and you've been in a state-owned enterprise, and also as a teacher, and then also as an entrepreneur then in your own business. So what do you think is sort of like the central thing that like drove all of those ventures? So I mean, if I think of you as a researcher, a teacher, a statistician, being at Wits Business School makes sense. But then if you tell me about your journey as an entrepreneur, I'm not like finding any of those things fitting into that part of your journey. So what do you think, is there like anything, I suppose should be the question, that, has been central across that journey?
Yeah, I think the main thing really that has been common, first is the love for seeing people being independent, being skillful enough or knowledgeable enough to be able to do something meaningful for themselves. And that then drove me, because based on the entrepreneurship side of things, where I felt I needed to do a PhD to understand entrepreneurship a bit more, some of the failures or some of the mistakes that I made there, when I look back, it dawned to me that maybe if I had somebody who has walked the route, who mentored me during that journey, some of the things I wouldn't have maybe made the same mistakes that I made. Maybe the impact or the level of the degree in which I failed maybe was going to be minimal. And then based on that, then that's when my journey of being a mentor for entrepreneurs started. And then I got exposed to coaching as a tool for development. And then my journey broadened up from just being a mentor for entrepreneurs now to being a business and executive coach, because then I realized that the mentorship has got its own limitations, because you must have really walked the path to be able to mentor somebody. But with coaching, you need the coaching skills. You need to have being exposed in that person's environment a bit to understand some of the things. But then you can coach people even if you haven't really walked that path. And then that's when it broadened up. So if you look at my academic career, as a program director for the Masters in Coaching, as a researcher, I would do a lot of research on entrepreneurship and coaching, and also as a teacher who teaches or who lectures entrepreneurship and research. That ties back to the experience that I had back as a business owner, to say a mentor is important, a coach is important in the journey of whoever, more than just for entrepreneurs. The research is important, because some of the mistakes you make, if you haven't done your research or don't understand the industry you get in, then you just go kind of like blindfolded, and then you kind of like hit your head against the wall. So those things for me really kind of like come together to say a mentor, a coach, the research, all those things come together into building somebody. So if you want to develop, if you've got interest in people's development, you will find that you will tend to refer to research, you will tend to look into your skills as a coach, you will tend to refer back to your experience so that you can mentor people, more so teach them also in the class. and make the theories in class a bit more practical and a bit more realistic in real life. So that's how this whole thing that can look like a broad and diverse kind of hat that I wear, if you look at it, it all comes under the entrepreneurship umbrella and the people development aspect of it.
Interesting. So I just have another question then, and perhaps this would be useful for people who are thinking of academia. And I suppose, you know, being an academic and sitting on interview panels, you see so many CVs from people who come from industry, but then, you know, we can't appoint them because, you know, the skills aren't necessarily, how do you say, like perfectly interchangeable, right? So just because you have 10 years of experience in industry doesn't mean that, you know, you can then have an equivalent position in academia. But one thing that I find with more advanced students, specifically, you know, the type of students we have in the Wits School of Governance, and I'm sure you guys have in the Wits Business School, is that, you know, they have a sense of they want to have someone who's walked that journey before, right? Because if you haven't been there, you know, what are you going to teach? What are you going to teach me? But I like the distinction you make between a mentor and a coach, whereas a mentor is someone who's been there, so they can then tell you, you know, this may be the best way for you to go, whereas a coach might not necessarily have sort of walked in your shoes. So in terms of people who maybe want to come into academia from industry, how would you, I suppose you came in very early, right? So, you know, you sort of came in at lecturer level, but I think if someone is quite senior, you know, they'd have to sort of come in perhaps even at associate professor level even, or adjunct professor. What sort of advice would you have for people who want to make that sort of transition? Or is it something they should be engaging in already if they know that in the future, you know, maybe I want to retire as an academic or what have you?
Yeah, it's a very interesting one. Moving from the corporate to go to academia, it can be a very sometimes tricky road. Depending also on the scarce skills maybe or within the academic space of that specific field that you are in. But what I will advise for people who already in their mind know that at some stage might want to move into academia is to start as early as possible to expose themselves into that environment. Like do guest lecturing, do maybe sessional work, do supervision and those kind of things. And that kind of like add something more than just the corporate experience in your CV, so that when you now want to get into academia, you've got something to show as some bit of experience or exposure in that space. There are people who move holistically, who haven't done anything in the academia and move to academia. Let's say maybe there's a center that's opening, looking for people maybe in energy, for an example, and you generally don't have in the academic space people who already have that experience, then you're most likely to be able to move directly without any. But planning ahead helps, and start doing little things in the academic space so that you get that exposure to make it a bit easier for you when you start looking for opportunities there.
Yeah, absolutely. So just then moving on to, you know, sort of more the entrepreneurship side of things. So we obviously have a big problem with unemployment. Even graduates are being affected by that now. I mean, we even have people with PhDs now who are not able to find jobs. So it seems like a lot of young graduates and even advanced graduate students are going to have to eventually go the entrepreneurship route, even if it's just for a short while until they can find whatever job they're looking for. What would be your advice to someone like that? Is it, you know, sort of, do you sort of wait and see what's going to happen, or do you try to do it while you're a student? And if you have to do it as early as possible, I suppose my question would be like, how do I know, you know, like what's my thing? Maybe my area doesn't, you know, have entrepreneurs in, so I don't know what that looks like in my head.
Yeah, it's always best, obviously, to start early. But sometimes we sit comfortably because we think with our qualifications we'll go out and just, get a job like that. And then when you start realizing that no one wants to give you that job, and only then you start thinking, what else can I do? I always say it's never too late, but it's always best to start early. If for an example, you studied something that didn't cover entrepreneurship, you've got no idea where to start, there's a lot of support organization out there that support startups and stuff. It helps to, and now also with the internet, there's a lot of information there where you can go attend courses or master classes or some training, so that you get to understand, where do I start? How do I build the business model? How do I build my value proposition and those kind of things? So that helps to start following people who share that content on social media. Look out for training, look out for, there's a lot of free conversations online. I do a lot of them as well. That helps. Also looking for a mentor, look for somebody who kind of like have achieved what you hope to achieve or in a similar industry, and ask that person to mentor you. And then in that way, then you are able to at least get started and move forward. But in entrepreneurship overall, most of the thing is by trial and error method. You go there, you learn as you go. I normally say there's no university for entrepreneurship. You can go study it at the university, but when you are done studying it, it does not make you an entrepreneur. The only thing that will make you an entrepreneur is the practice. So even those who studied it, they still have to go and be entrepreneurs by practicing it. So the more you do, the more you learn, and the more you know, and the more you improve, and then the more you become the entrepreneur. So the biggest thing about being an entrepreneur is that you must not be scared to fail. You have to try, and you have to go where you don't know. The uncertainty is always there. You have to go to places you don't know and just throw yourself there and try. But at the same time, make sure you try to make yourself competent by learning, upskilling, and those kind of things, so that at least you minimize the failure. And the big thing now in entrepreneurship is that it's guaranteed you're gonna fail, but what you want to do is you want to fail fast and you want to fail cheap. And you do that by going in the market and trying and trying and trying until you get it right.
Sure, so fail fast and fail cheap, you say?
That's what they say with the lean startup principles. That's what they advocate for, that you don't want to build all your products and all the fancy functionalities on them that cost you $1 million, and then you go there, you find the market doesn't like it, and then you fail with $1 million plus. But if you do the minimum possible, you go into the market, you find that maybe you fail with half that. And then in that way, you can recover quickly and make the pivot as fast as you can, and make all the alterations you need to make so that you're ready to make the money.
Okay. So if I know I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I know that's my passion, why would I do a master's or a PhD? Is it worth it? No organization is going to employ me. I'm going to work for myself. Would you advise people to still go for advanced degrees?
I wouldn't say there's a blanket answer to that, and I would say do it or don't do it. It depends on what you need, what you think you're going to get out of the industry you're getting into. Is it technical? Is it something you need to go get qualifications for? It's a very individualized kind of decision based on, you have to do your own analysis and look, what do I need? What am I going to get out of it? How it's going to help me going forward? And then you make the decision based on that. But at the same time, I always say there's no learning that is wasted. I've got a master's in statistics. I want to run a business. And the skills that you get there when you are studying is not only the technical part that I can analyze data and stuff, but you also get developed as a person. And then you get your problem solving skills, your understanding of things, all those things get developed in the process. And that can never be wasted. One day you can decide to be an entrepreneur. Tomorrow you decide I'm enough, like I did. Tomorrow you decide, no, I'm going to corporate. And my master's came in handy. Tomorrow you decide I'm going back to entrepreneurship. You wouldn't have wasted that because you will have learned something anyway. So education is you will never waste education. And the key thing is what you do with it. I've got a lot of colleagues that got PhDs and stuff, and they just sitting and focusing on being academics. I took my qualifications and use it for my business. I can afford to charge somebody more for my stats analysis because I've got a qualification. I can afford to charge somebody more for consultation because I've got a PhD. So it will never be wasted. Do you have a plan, what you're gonna do with that paper, or it's just a paper for you that's gonna sit there, you put it there, and then you still go and behave like you've got undergrad or you've got matric. It's what you do about it that becomes valuable.
Yeah, interesting. So I just want to then ask you, and I feel a little bit bad asking this, but I do study women's unpaid reproductive labor and their time use, and I saw that you had children in the house. With all these many hats, how do you sort of practically manage your time, between academia and, your supervision, your research, and your businesses that you then run on the side?
Yeah, that's a question you generally get as a woman. It's a tricky one. I will never lie to anybody and say it's easy, because we all have 24 hours in a day. And if you're running a business, so it's kind of like you've got two jobs. You've got your business, and then you've got your job as an academic. And that is like two jobs that normally people will have one and still have 24 hours. So how you manage that is really very tricky. It's very tricky. You can never get it 100% accurate. But one of the things that I normally say, and we also had this in one of the online conversation I had with some women who are in boards, who are executives, in terms of, normally people talk about the balance. And I normally say there's no such thing as a balance. You will never get a balance that you can quantitatively say, I spend 50% on my personal, I spend 50% on my business, I spend this much on this. You tend to focus more on quality than quantity, because the truth of the matter is quantitatively, you will spend more time on your work and your business than you will spend with your family. But the issue becomes the few hours that you have with your family, what do you do with it? Because you can never be able to spend 50%, especially if you're an ambitious woman who wants to achieve things. You will never be able to spend the equal amount of time you spend in your business, same as what you spend with your family. But the few hours you have with your family makes it count. So that when you're busy with your business and your job, you still feel a bit guilty, I must be honest. You don't feel as guilty as you would if you don't make sure that the few hours at least count. And also that, I will say that, I'll put the disclaimer, it's not easy, because the pressure tends to be more on the job and the business than it is from your family. You've got your job and all the 2 days screaming at you, your kids and your family are not screaming at you. And the likelihood is that you will tend to attend to those who scream the loudest and forget those who don't scream the loudest, and most of the time are the ones that matters the most. So that balance is tricky. It's a very tricky one, but you have to do your best with the little time you have with your family.
Yeah. So make sure you use the time valuably or usefully. What is the word? I don't know what the word is, but the family time needs to count. It needs to count. It can't just be, wasted. Okay, well, thank you so much. This was such an insightful discussion, Dr. J. I really appreciate you joining me on the Blue Couch, and all the best with your future endeavors.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me. Thank you for the opportunity to share my I don't know if I should call it my parallel life of being an academic and a business person at the same time.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think I like what you're doing, especially in terms of looking at the technical skills and our passion, because most of the time we focus on what we are good at, what we get distinctions for, and forget that you can get distinction and be good at that and try to do it, but be miserable because you're not passionate about it. So that balance, it's not always straightforward, but I always encourage anybody, try as many things as you can. At some point, you will find your passion. You will find what fulfills you. And when you find that, you will enjoy what you're doing. Thank you.
Absolutely. Go for it. All right. Thanks.
Yeah.